Do you have a better chance of finding high grade comic books if you focus on quantity over quality? Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up a pretty substantial set of comic books that I won at auction from the seller Infinity Comics on the platform HipComic. This was another order that I took a while to unbox, and I can't wait to get into it, but when I was preparing to figure out which books were in this order, I realized that there were a lot of comics that I won, and I wonder if that was really the best strategy for me to find maybe those diamonds in the rough or those handful of gems that I really look for when I'm trying to bid on comic books. I have gone through different phases of how I approach bidding and participating in auctions. I used to consider budget as kind of the primary factor, and when I first started bidding at auction, I participated in heritage auctions events, really targeting books that were within my budget, but they were older books, and then slowly moved into eBay auctions, and then more recently got into hip comic auctions. But as I kind of moved through the different platforms, my strategy for how I attacked books and auctions and bids and things like that, it's all changed and evolved, and it's moved away from budget. And then there was kind of like, I would say the majority of the time was more around quantity and acquisition, thinking if I had 100 comic books, then chances are one of them has to be maybe a 9/8 candidate. But looking back, I wonder if that's really true. And through my comic book collecting journey, I've also picked up like short boxes worth of comics at a time. And I've never purchased a collection, but I have picked up maybe two or three short boxes of comics that kind of are very specifically defined. Maybe it's a certain publisher or a certain era of comic books, and the seller or store just really didn't want them and were giving them away at kind of pennies on the dollar. And so I was kind of taking a chance, thinking the same way, that if I got a lot of 100 comic books, certainly there has to be a few valuable ones in there that would kind of pay for the entire lot, and then I would have the rest of the comics for free. And based on my experience, that doesn't always happen. It's still around being very picky and very critical of the books that you're looking for. But I think it also just kind of depends on what you're trying to do. Like, what is the point and the target and the specific reason why you're trying to acquire books. And for a great while, it was really about the accumulation of the quantity of trying to really build out my collection and give myself more opportunities, I think, from maybe the speculation side and less on the condition side. And then as time went on, I moved away from that and really tried to hone in on focus specifically on condition itself. So this set of auction wins that I'm about to unpack, it's right on that verge of me moving away from quantity and being a little bit more specific about quality, and maybe holding out for certain books or focusing a lot of my resources, prep, and energy on specific keys, high grade copies, and so forth, win or lose. And so if I would lose that, I wouldn't get upset and just go buy 5 or 6 other books because I had the budget for that one key and it didn't work out. So I want to open up this shipment that I got from Infinity Comics, as it is a pretty good number of comics, and look at the conditions and look at the advertised conditions and really see if maybe at the time picking up this higher quantity will end up working out instead of focusing on those 2 or 3 keys. Now, if you stay to the end of this video, I will show you the order summary where you could see all of the books with their final bids, and then I'll compare that final bid against today's current fair market value if I were to keep the books raw. And if I were to send these books in for grading, what kind of graded values could I expect for some of these books? I'll go over all of those numbers in the order summary, but first, let me unbox these comics that I won at auction from Infinity Comics. All right, here is the shipment that I received from Infinity Comics. They included a sticker, I think it's pronounced fragile, which could be French for please destroy this package. I'm not exactly sure, but pretty significant 6-pound order sent via UPS. They do charge for shipping. They also charge for tax, so I always have to keep that in mind when I'm bidding on books because they will tax me as a California resident. But the shipment appears to have arrived safely and securely, so let me go ahead and get it opened up. Okay, so we're in. Typically, the way that they ship their comics is they take, it looks like maybe 8 to 10 books, and then they put them in a specific bag. And I typically, based on the size of my shipments, I'm getting a couple of those. This time there were 3 bags, and then they just sort of stack all the books, the 3 packs of books, put their own piece of cardboard, and wrap bubble wrap around it. That's pretty much their method. Looks like all the books arrived safely, so let's take a look and see which books I won at auction. First one, always one of my favorites, X Factor #1 from 1985. This is the first appearance of X Factor. The only thing I regret about this one is I should have opened it in time and maybe considered sending it in for the Walt Simonson signature since he is the cover artist for this. But still, love those early issues of X Factor. Next is Wonder Woman #48. I specifically love these David Finch covers. He did a run of covers and interiors on Wonder Woman. So I picked this one up, and I think I did get another one as well. I did. Wonder Woman 42. Wonder Woman has had so many great runs of amazing artists. Jenny Frison, Adam Hughes, from the modern era or the copper era, I guess. George Perez is kind of started it all in terms of great Wonder Woman artists. But when I found out that Finch also did a run, I kind of fell in love with the entire run, and so I've been buying those whenever I see them. Moving away from very nice David Finch Wonder Woman covers to War is Hell #6. This one from 1973, I grabbed it because it was cheap and it was a 20-cent cover. It's not in the greatest shape. So this is again where the quantity over quality would be an example of that strategy hurting me because a book like this in mid-grade probably doesn't have a whole lot of value or desirability, even though it does have that 20-cent cover. Next is Invaders #9. You can definitely see this in the light here with this very contoured, almost Van Gogh-esque bag on the outside. I don't know why that's interesting to me. I think it just reminds me of some of these bags from when I was a kid, when I would look through back issues. And I remember just how does the bag actually get like this, where it's almost like compressed or something, or it's become airtight to some degree. But I always loved rebagging and boarding these because the texture of it just always felt a little odd. But enough about the comic book bag. The actual comic, this is cover art by Jack Kirby with the Union Jack on the cover there. Another Invaders book. This is Invaders #8, speaking of Union Jack. This is Union Jack's first cover appearance where he joins the Invaders. I'd say probably one of the more collectible Invaders books. I also won Invaders #7, and this is the first appearance of Union Jack. So here he appears first in story, and in this one he's on the cover. A lot of good value in those single-digit issues of Invaders. Another series, Jack Kirby series, The Eternals. This is Eternals 14. That's about as bad as a cover miswrap as you'll ever see. I mean, my goodness, I don't even know if there's anything left on the back cover. And the front cover from the printings, obviously it's cut off here. But Eternals 14, for what it's worth, the first appearance of the Cosmic Hulk robot. So they do battle with Robot Hulk as they tried to get more of the mainstream comic book characters into some of these series. By Eternals 14, I imagine probably not selling as well as the first few issues of Eternals. And so it's time to get the Hulk, Silver Surfer, and some other characters into the Eternals storyline. Here's Eternals 6. You just can't go wrong with Jack Kirby cover art. This is from 1976. Just amazing. And with the Eternals movie having come and gone, these are really easy to find now. Very affordable. Just a matter of the condition, as I've been talking about in terms of focusing or waiting, being more patient for when these are in higher grade, specifically as the market is kind of falling off now. When you're thinking about probably not silver, more like late bronze, early copper, where a book like this, maybe in a 7 or an 8, was still collectible, and now it's, I would say, questionable. But I still love picking up these single digit books. Here's Marvel Premiere number 21. I don't remember what I was thinking with this one. This is the first appearance of Misty Knight, so I knew it was a key, but I don't know what that is. Staining, it's just like almost like ink bleeding all over the top. So that's tough. I mean, there's no way that this is considered a high grade copy at this point. The spine has a number of color breaking ticks, but did want to pick it up for the fact that it was a key issue, a key first character appearance. This is Man Thing number 19, kind of the same thing, just like an ink sweating, ink bleeding. Definitely hurts the overall appearance of the book, the presentation of the book. So even if it grades out, which this one, it also has a slight misrep, but probably not too many color breaks, if at all. There's some other ink-related blemishes on the spine, but without that, I would say it's constructed pretty well, but just you can't help. It's such an eyesore with the ink problem at the top there. The book does feature a first appearance of a Scavenger, but still, I wouldn't even consider that book a key. Next is Machine Man number 6. More, I guess, just feeling like if it's a Jack Kirby book, I gotta take a chance on it. And this was another one, too, that I'm kind of kicking myself. The cover art here is not Kirby, but it is Walt Simonson, who is doing his very best to be respectful of all the Kirby designs, and specifically the Kirby design of Machine Man that looks amazing. Just such great sci-fi action here on this cover. And yeah, might have considered sending this one in, as it looks like a nice high-grade copy. Oh, this one too has that weird contoured bag, making my hands feel weird. I hope my fingerprints don't rub off. Next is Luke Cage Power Man number 18. Really awesome 20-cent Power Man issue. Cover art by Gil Kane and John Romita. But again, just eyeballing the condition very quickly. Lots of color breaking ticks here. And I like to show these up close because, you know, from further back, it's like, look at me, I'm getting all of these really cheap 9.8 candidates. They're not. They're somewhere mid to low high grade. Or it just could be straight mid-grade on some of these. So then, again, the value becomes questionable, where these would just be great raw books to keep, but really not worth grading anymore in this comic book market. Moving into a modern book, this is Guardians of the Galaxy number 6. Cover and interior art by Sarah Pichelli. I really think the character of Angela is interesting. She's been rumored to appear in Guardians live action as well as Thor. But I just think her character journey from her first appearance in Spawn with Image Comics and then being brought into the Marvel universe is interesting. And this one looks to be in pretty good shape. So I'm glad I picked that one up. And then speaking of Angela in the Marvel universe, this is Guardians of the Galaxy number 5. This is her first appearance in the Marvel universe after Marvel acquired the rights to her. She makes a cameo in Age of Ultron number 10, but this is her first full appearance and cover appearance as well. Next, moving away from moderns, I've always loved this cover, Doctor Strange number 4, Doctor Strange Meets Death. Frank Brunner, who did a number of Doctor Strange covers, quite underappreciated for Doctor Strange and his artwork in general. Another pretty poorly miswrapped book, which may end up helping this one. I would say that this is a high-grade copy. It certainly has some problems, and then as I look closer, again, these sort of ink bleeds or ink stains, they almost look like water damage, not quite moisture damage, but and then also a dog ear as well. So, the more that you look at the books, the more things you start to see. And I just said it's a high grade, and probably now it's already moved down to mid grade, but nevertheless, Doctor Strange solo series, single digit, and an awesome Frank Brunner cover. Next is Conan the Barbarian, number 43. Gil Kane on cover art for this one, including Red Sonja, but looks like she's not helping out very much. It's all Conan right now. And I would just say, too, I'm really appreciative of the monster here wearing the loincloth. Maybe it's not covered up in the front, and that's why we have Conan's reaction, because maybe the loincloth is starting to fall off or something, and he's quite surprised and shocked at the horror that he's witnessing. Next is Captain America, number 181. And this is the first appearance of Captain America. Well, not the Steve Rogers Captain America, the Roscoe Simmons new Captain America, with Steve Rogers taking on the persona and identity Nomad. This one looks to actually have some sort of color or moisture damage here on the side. Stacking crease, spine ticks. I'm starting to see some consistency with the condition of these. So I think it'll kind of depend on what I ended up bidding on some of these books to kind of see if the bids lined up with the condition or if I overbid. So that'll be interesting. Adventure Comics, number 370. Really nice 12 center here. And this one's fun because it's written by Jim Shooter, who actually wrote for DC Comics as a teenager, which every time I hear that story, it's just completely fascinating to me, and love the ambition that he submitted stories to DC and they actually hired him as a writer. So that's always such a cool story. All right, grabbing the last stack here, we have Amazing Spider-Man, number 334. This is the Return of the Sinister Six, Part 1. Really fun storyline, cover art and interior art by Eric Larson. Then we have Swamp Thing, number 12. Can't decide what I love more, Swamp Thing or Man Thing, but I always love these covers with the characters going into the mouth of a monster. And maybe that's what Conan saw on the other book. I don't think that was Swamp Thing, but love grabbing these 20-cent Swamp Thing covers. Has a few spine ticks on it, so not super high grade, but still fun to grab those. Here's Swamp Thing number 11, one of my all-time favorite Swamp Thing covers. Cover art by Luis Dominguez on this one. Love the facial expressions on the two characters here. Swamp Thing coming in, out of the mist, out of the swamp. The moon breaking the frame. I just love this one. This one is miswrapped. There are some ticks, but this one could be a candidate for, every time I do this, then there's another stain of some kind. I really miss the image scans on these, as well as the bottom too. I just did a really poor job of assessing some of these books. I feel like I got better as time went on. It's why it's imperative to really study the scans before you jump in and bid. Here's Swamp Thing number 9. Except for issue number 1, to me, this is the Swamp Thing book to have. Bernie Wrightson on cover art. This could be a poster, t-shirt. It definitely is a mid-grade copy with a lot of the spine ticks. This is a book I pick up from Mile High Comics quite often and pay a lot for it. But when I get it, it does not look anything like this in terms of the condition. It's much higher quality. But was able to get this for a lot less relative to the condition, so there is that. It's just a matter of understanding if the conditions of these books and comparing them to my final bid, how does that work out? Another Swamp Thing book. This is Swamp Thing number 4. Another awesome cover by Bernie Wrightson. And kind of the same story as Swamp Thing 9, although I think this is an even worse shape with the darker cover. You can really see these spine ticks up and down really jump out at you, as well as some color loss here next to the staple. Lots of color loss here in the corner. So this could be somewhere around like a 3 or a 4. So still like picking those up, but would much rather prefer to have that one a little better shape. Interesting on this one, this is Superman number 283, cover art by Nick Cardy, who when I hear that name, I think of the House of Mystery, House of Secrets, Nick Cardy, that type of era in his artwork. And is this the first appearance of Wolf of Wall Street? I don't know, we'll have to check with Leonardo DiCaprio and see how he feels about it. But same story. I feel like I'm on repeat, mid-grade at best. Really kind of depends on what that final bid was at auction to see if I ended up adding any value there. Next is another great book. Always love picking this one up. Spider-Man number 13. Cover art by Todd McFarlane. And like I always say, if you can't get someone else to homage you, then you should really homage yourself. And that's exactly what Uncle Todd did on this one. I'm just checking the book to see if it has any kind of ink bleeding or ink staining. It looks to be pretty good. Roughly a near mint copy, or maybe above. Could be a 9.8 candidate on that one. We'll see. Spider-Man #2, obviously the second issue of Todd McFarlane's adjectiveless Spider-Man title. Always love grabbing these for cheap because I think it's worth it to see if they ended up being a 9.8 candidate. Then jumping around again, going way back, awesome 20-cent cover for Monsters on the Prowl #16. First appearance of Thulsa Doom in this one, and back by popular demand, King Cole. This one's tough, looks to be maybe in the 6.0, 7.0 range. We'll see how that one grades out. And the last book is Marvel Team Up #35. Team up of the Human Torch and Doctor Strange, also featuring Valkyrie in this issue. Cover art once again by Gil Kane. So those were the books that I picked up at auction from Infinity Comics. And, if maybe I take off my glasses or I turn the lights off or show them very quickly on a live stream, then they all look really amazing. Just a fantastic assortment and collection of comics here. Great covers, great creators. There's really no argument there. It just comes down to condition. So yeah, I don't think there's any real question about, say, the cool factor of just the era, the covers, the creators, the stories, some of these being keys. But when you think about them in mid-grade, maybe they're not as appealing as they could be. I want to get to the order summary now and show you what I ended up bidding on these books, because I think really looking at those bids relative to the conditions will be the key to determine if this was a successful auction that I participated in. So let's take a look at those numbers. All right, here is the order summary for the auctions that I won on August 13th, 2023. Which, again, not trying to apologize for myself, but I was definitely excited about finding these Infinity Comic auctions. Wanted to get as many books as I could, but I know that my process was not as evolved and as sound as it is today in terms of the kind of books that I look for and some of the conditions that you see here in the item column, VGFN, FN, FN Plus, but was definitely a set of auctions that, I needed to participate in to learn from. This was a 29 book auction win. I was invoiced $228.27. And just as I was actually saying the amount, I was thinking about the books, and then I was also considering what if I applied $228.27 towards a specific key or small grail. How would that make me feel? So I want to think about that maybe as I'm going through the numbers here. And you can see in the total cost column, what I ended up doing is taking the shipping and handling, which was $26 to have these 29 books shipped to me, and then an additional 9.5% for tax. So when you look at the total cost, that is the final bid plus the tax plus the $26 to ship these 29 comics distributed across each comic in the shipment, where I then summarize the total cost to make sure that my math is right and it matches the invoice. Let me start going through the numbers so we can see how I did. As you can see, the cover price fair market value here, and as that compares to what I actually paid for the book. So if I move over and start to bring in some of the other columns, you can see the raw value here, which is not yet based on any specific grade. So I'll get to that here in a second. But this is just the raw value based on what I paid. And these numbers are a little skewed, as according to cover price, I'm adding $472 of value to my collection, which I do not agree with. Marvel Premiere 21 has a high value for a raw book at $150, but I can almost guarantee that's probably near mint or above and not in the condition that that book is in. So what I want to do is I want to plug in the grades based on simply just what was advertised in the auction. I could certainly just throw like 5.5 on all of them and take a look, but That raw value add is probably the maximum if I just keep all of these books raw, but they were high grade. So let me switch the grades out to their advertised condition. So let's put in the actual grade for these books and take a look and see what happens here. And if we look at the total raw value, was what 472 before, and now it's 76.73. For this many books and in the condition that these are in, it almost feels like a break even, honestly, which is not bad. It's not, but I think too, if you look to the column to the right where it's $33 of a CGC value add, it just feels like a lot of work for not a lot of return. Now, some of these books could be improved with a clean and press. Maybe a 6.0 here is actually a 7.0 once I start getting in there and grading it. But just to keep everything kind of easy and consistent, I applied those advertised grades here. So let's take a look at some of the values of some of the books that pop. So that Marvel Premiere number 21, even with that ink stain, just looking at that as an example, the raw value dropped from $150 to $21 when I assigned it as a 6.0. And I spent $10.47 to acquire that book. So it does have a decent value add of over $10. And also in a CGC 6.0, it's $68. So if you kind of forget the fact that there's that ink stain and that it is a mid-grade copy, let's just pretend that's a modern brand new 9.8 that I spent $10 to acquire, and it's a CGC 9.8 value of $68. I don't know how many of those books that I come across that I've picked up where I probably consider sending that in for a pre-screen. But I'm just not sure if Marvel Premiere 21, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if a 6.0 really is going to be anything more than around a $50 or $60 book. So that's what I mean by like worth the effort, because obviously it's the acquisition, the rebagging and boarding, the storage, the cataloging, the worrying about the value and studying what I have and don't have in my collection. There's a lot that goes into it where it may just not seem worth it in the long run, but still one of the higher value books in this set of comics that I won at auction. Let's take a look at some others. Here's another one that pops at Doctor Strange number 4 in a 6.5, $70 for that book in a CGC 6.5. Also, cover price fair market value of $13. I picked it up for $5.55. So again, that feels like a pretty good pickup. Swamp Thing number 9 in a 7.5, $59, $36 raw. I paid $19.25, and that's a lot less than I would spend at Mile High Comics. But again, I'm paying more there to get a book in at least like a 9.2, which is a much more attractive copy. Look at a few other of the wins, and then maybe take a look at some of the losses here. For a few of these books, they actually weren't advertised with a condition at all, so I just ballparked them as 9.4. Spider-Man 13 and a 9.4, I spent $12.39 to acquire that. $50 for that book in a CGC 9.4. Raw value add of $4.61, so not too bad there. Jumping back to the Invaders books, Invaders number 7, the first Union Jack in story, 6.5 was the advertised grade, Fine Plus. Picked it up for around $10. Cover price says it's a $20 book, so a $10 value add there, and $38 in a CGC 6.5. 7.5 on Invaders number 8, the first cover appearance of Union Jack. But you can see I really overspent on that one, $23.09 to acquire that book for a $6.09 raw value loss and a CGC value loss of $11. So if I really wanted that book in a 7.5, I could have spent a few more bucks and just got it in a slab already. Everything else overall, a few dollars here, a few dollars there, plus or minus. Maybe the Swamp Thing number 4 was a book I paid the most for in this order, $25.53 I spent on that book. It's a $20 book according to cover price, $54 in a CGC 5.0, which is probably an accurate grade after having looked at the book a little more closely. It's certainly a right down the middle, high grade, borderline, low grade copy. I think I looked at it and guessed during the unboxing around a 4.0, but it's somewhere around there, and that's a $5.53 loss. But then there's X Factor number 1, $5.34 gain on an 8.0. I spent $5.66 to get that book. So, relatively speaking, here, as I just go ahead and look at the overall set of auction wins and really just think about the books together, I guess I'm okay with a break even. If I'm a collector and I'm looking to acquire the books, at the time, maybe the fair market value was a little bit higher than it is now. So you have to kind of think about that as well. What was the comic book market like in August of 2023? We're approaching that being almost a year ago. And if you follow the comic book market, it has continued to slide and been on a pretty steady decline. Again, not trying to apologize for my decisions here, but I think even a year later, to have more or less of just a minor value add or kind of a break even order, it's not the end of the world. As a comic book collector, the acquisition of these books has me excited, and so if that's how I want to spend my money, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think for me, I'm always looking for something that just feels like a deal. And I think that that's sort of kind of like a fundamental property of a comic book collector. I mean, you're definitely kind of always thinking about value as a collector. Even if you're buying comics to read them, you're still paying a price to acquire the book, paying cover price or that pre-order FOC price or whatever it may be. You're always thinking about how much money you're spending. So on one hand, I'm okay with spending the money to acquire the books, but I don't know if I really got any deals here. I will definitely go in and grade each of these books, but they'll probably end up being pretty close to their advertised condition. Honestly, maybe some of those conditionless descriptions where I assigned a 9.4, maybe a few of those end up being 9.8 candidates, and then you've got a $100 CGC 9.8 possibly that makes up for some of this. I mean, some of those moderns I did pick up for under $2, and they look to be at least near mint, so there were some deals in there. It's just I always get disappointed because my expectations for trying to collect higher grade copies, when I don't meet those expectations, and it's completely my fault, like I either get too excited, I don't review the scan properly, and I always just feel disappointed in myself. But I really need to look at the books that I picked up and be grateful the fact that I did have the budget at the time to acquire these. And with many of these books being the first copies of those issues that are going to be added to my collection, then those books kind of set that bar in terms of what do I want to collect going forward, where I kind of have that minimum grade, meaning if I've got a book now that's a 6.0, then I'm going to look for that book in the next grade or two up to keep trying to upgrade that book, where I've now set the floor on that issue. And that's kind of how I look at it to kind of help justify the purchase is getting in on an issue, setting that floor, becoming aware of it, appreciating the book itself, the fact that I have it in my collection, and then hopefully by upgrading it down the road, by finding either a better raw copy or looking to further invest in the book with a clean end press. Let me know what you think about these books that I picked up at auction from Infinity Comics. I kind of go back to that question. If you had this much money to spend, would you divvy it up across all of these books? Or would you maybe apply it to that one book that you're looking for? I'd be interested to hear what you think about it if you want to leave a comment on this video. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.